On February 18, 2001, on a cold Sunday morning, FBI Special Agent Robert Hanssen was arrested by the US government for conspiracy to commit espionage. In what would send shockwaves throughout the intelligence community, Robert Hanssen, a seemingly normal, well-respected FBI agent, would be exposed as one of the most notorious double agents, with the Department of Justice describing it as possibly the worst intelligence disaster in US history. But what led this unassuming FBI agent down a path of lies, betrayal, and deceit? Why would he go behind the back of his country and sell secrets to the Soviets for decades? What did he hope to gain? And how did he go unnoticed for so long? Join us as we take a deep dive into the infamous story of Robert Hanssen. Robert Hanssen was born in Chicago, Illinois on April 18, 1944 to a Lutheran family of German and Polish origins. His father was an officer with the Chicago Police Department and his mother was a housewife. Throughout Hanssen's upbringing, he would have a love-hate relationship with his father. Although his father belittled him and abused him, Hanssen would outwardly worship him and look up to him as a role model. Many believe that his father's treatment would be a major influence on what was to come. During Hanssen's teen years, he was known to be avidly interested in Soviet espionage, believing that they were the very best in the spy trade. He sought to learn the inner mechanisms of the KGB, and would later study Russian in college. After graduating college with a master's degree in accounting, he would be rejected by the National Security Agency and would ultimately join the Chicago Police Department, just like his father. Except Hanssen wasn't any ordinary cop. Ironically enough, he worked in forensic accounting, where he would investigate police officers suspected of corruption. After 3 years in the Chicago PD, Hanssen would quit his job and join the FBI. On January 12, 1976, Hanssen swore an oath to bear true faith and allegiance to the United States. But only 3 short years later, Hanssen would descend into darkness and begin his betrayal of that oath. Hanssen began his FBI career like any other agent, focusing on his work, putting in the effort, and starting a family. The first few years seemed ordinary until about 3 years into his career when he was assigned to counterintelligence. His new task involved creating a database of Soviet intelligence, marking the beginning of a surprising turn in his career. Out of the blue, Hanssen made his initial contact with the Soviets, approaching a Soviet military intelligence agent and proposing to be a double agent. In 1979, he anonymously delivered a package to a Soviet trade office used as the front for the GRU, the Soviet Military Intelligence Agency. This package exposed the identity of an FBI mole within the GRU. Over the following 2 years, Hanssen continued selling information to the Soviets, earning around $20,000. The leaked information mainly revolved around the FBI's surveillance activities and lists of suspected Soviet intelligence agents. The most significant betrayal during this period involved Dmitry Polyakov, a Soviet army general who had been a crucial CIA informant, passing substantial amounts of information to US intelligence. Tragically, as a consequence of his betrayal, Polyakov would later be executed by the Soviets. The impact of Hanssen's actions on US intelligence raised concerns within the intelligence community, signaling the possible presence of a mole. However, he managed to evade detection, partly because of the ongoing suspicions surrounding CIA informant Aldrich Ames during that period. Interestingly, while Hanssen remained hidden from the FBI's scrutiny, he couldn't escape the notice from his wife. In 1980, she caught him with some suspicious-looking papers and confronted him about them. He would shockingly admit to her that he was selling secrets to the Soviets. You'd think he'd come up with something better than that. He insisted to her that the secrets and information he had given to them were worthless, and promised her that he would never speak to the Soviets again. While Hanssen was able to keep that promise to his wife and quit spying for 5 years, he would eventually resume his nefarious activities and begin spying for the Soviets again. Except this time, Hanssen would take his betrayal to the next level, and there would be no turning back. Although Hanssen would lay low and keep his nose clean for roughly 5 years after his wife's discovery, he would certainly make up for the lost time after the fact. Throughout those years, he was transferred into positions that granted him access to more sensitive and vital information. In 1981, he was transferred to the budget unit of the FBI's Intelligence Division in Washington, D.C., and then from 1983 to 1985, he was part of the FBI's Soviet Analytical Unit. Each of these jobs provided him an opportunity to obtain classified documents and information, which he would later share with his handlers. Things took a serious turn in 1985 when Hanssen began operating as a double agent using the alias Ramon Garcia. In this role, he continued delivering documents and computer files exposing U.S. intelligence and counterintelligence activities both domestically and abroad. The information he provided led to the identification and capture of several double agents within the Soviet intelligence system, with at least 3 of them facing arrest and execution due to his leaks. For his efforts, the Soviets paid Hanssen a modest sum of $500,000 plus some jewelry. Yet again, Hanssen would catch a lucky break and avoid detection for leaking those 3 individuals because, unaware to him, CIA informant Aldrich Ames had beaten him to the punch and already leaked their information earlier that year. Because the FBI was blaming Ames for the leak, Hanssen was neither suspected nor investigated, which bolstered his ego and led him to continue his double agent efforts. 2 years later, in 1987, Hanssen would be recalled to Washington, D.C., tasked with a very important mission: to study all known and rumored penetrations of the FBI. You can probably see where this is going. Robert Hanssen was essentially being tasked with searching for himself. Predictably, Hanssen took great care to make sure that he did not reveal himself with his study. But the cherry on top is that not only was he playing the FBI for fools, he handed over his entire study to the KGB in 1988. Later that year, things would start to catch up to him. Hanssen would get dinged on a government report for committing a serious security breach for revealing secret information to a Soviet defector during a debriefing. The agents working for him in that matter actually reported the breach to a supervisor, but for reasons unknown, no action was taken, probably because he wasn't on the radar yet as a possible double agent. But the tides would begin to shift for Robert Hanssen. His growing arrogance, combined with the arrests of other suspected double agents and spies, brought attention to his actions. As he continued his treasonous activities, a target started forming on his back. The beginning of the end for Hanssen's betrayal was set in motion as the consequences of his choices began to catch up with him. Throughout the late 1980s, Hanssen, likely thinking he would never be caught, kept up his streak of espionage. He shared extensive information with the Soviets, including details about the US government's plans for intelligence gathering, additional lists of American double agents, and other crucial information. However, in 1990, suspicions surrounding Hanssen began to escalate. That same year, Mark Walk, Hanssen's brother-in-law and fellow FBI agent, became suspicious of Hanssen's espionage activities. The revelation came when Hanssen's wife, who was also Walk's sister, informed him about the discovery of a file containing cash on a dresser in the Hanssen household. Walk had previously heard from his sister that Hanssen had mentioned the possibility of retiring to the Eastern Communist Bloc in Soviet Russia. Combining this information with the knowledge that the FBI was actively searching for a mole, Walk decided to recommend to the FBI that Hanssen be investigated. Unfortunately, his supervisor did not take any action on his recommendation. Yet again, Hanssen got bolder and bolder. After the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991, Hanssen brazenly approached the GRU at a Russian embassy in person and walked up to one of its officers in a parking garage. With a package of documents in hand, he identified himself by his Soviet codename Ramon Garcia and offered his services as a spy. The officer he approached didn't recognize the codename and told him to kick rocks. After that incident, the Russians filed an official protest with the US State Department. Even though Hanssen literally showed his face, disclosed his codename, and revealed his FBI affiliation, he miraculously escaped detection and arrest when the investigation into the incident never advanced. Hanssen would continue to take risks into the early 90s. On several occasions, he would arouse suspicions with his odd behaviors and would often be the target of minor investigations relating to his weird actions. He hacked into a fellow FBI agent's computer, causing an investigation that led nowhere, and even a convicted FBI mole told the FBI that he suspected Hanssen of being a spy. With the arrest of Aldrich Ames in 1993, the United States believed it had taken out one of its biggest moles and potential sources of information given to the Soviets. However, some of the information that was leaked could not possibly be tied to Ames, which led to continued efforts to find out who else was leaking information. Unfortunately, this led investigators to incorrectly suspect CIA case officer Brian Kelly as who they believed was responsible for Hanssen's leaks. After the parking garage incident, Hanssen had no contact for about 8 years with the Russians, which was his longest hiatus to date. However, he simply could not keep himself away. His decision to return as a double agent would ultimately lead to his downfall. In the year following the arrest of Aldrich Ames, the FBI and CIA formed a joint mole hunting team to find out who had been making these intelligence leaks, and codenamed the suspected spy Gray Suit. With Hanssen laying low for those 8 years, he escaped notice, but the joint team was clearing names one by one. In 1999, after nearly 8 years of inactivity, Hanssen resumed his double agent efforts. He re-established contact with the SVR, the successor to the KGB. Despite the 8-year hiatus, the FBI and CIA were still actively searching for Hanssen. A critical moment occurred in 2000 when the FBI and CIA obtained authentic Russian documents implicating an American spy resembling Hanssen. Investigators enlisted disgruntled Russian officers to expose moles, investing millions of dollars to acquire a specific file containing an audio tape of Hanssen. They just didn't know it was him in the recording yet. After obtaining that particular audio recording, investigators listened to it. The tape was a conversation between the mole and a KGB agent. While the voice sounded familiar, they weren't quite sure who it could be. It wasn't until investigators went through the files provided by the Russian agent that they discovered notes of the mole using a quote from George S. Patton's speech to the Third Army about the purple pissing Japanese. One of the investigators remembered Hanssen using that same quote. After listening to the recording again, they recognized the unknown voice to be Hanssen's. With the mole finally identified, locations, dates, and cases were matched with Hanssen's activities during the period. 2 fingerprints collected from a trash bag in the file were analyzed and proved to be Hanssen's. Now, all they had to do was catch him in the act for the best chances of a conviction. Hanssen was set to retire, so investigators had to move fast. Their goal was to catch him red-handed in espionage. At this point, Hanssen was serving as a detailee to the Office of Foreign Missions at the Department of State. FBI leadership decided Hanssen needed to be removed from his temporary position and brought back to FBI headquarters to keep him closely monitored. They gave him a nice promotion and an easy job assignment to make him feel comfortable, because who would give someone a raise if they were under suspicion? This likely inflated Hanssen's ego even more. By February 2001, roughly 300 personnel were working the investigation and monitoring Hanssen. He would be tracked from the time he left his house to the time he got home at night, and through their monitoring, they confirmed he was still an active spy. It's all culminated on February 18, 2001 at Foxstone Park in Vienna, Virginia. On a cold Sunday morning, Hanssen had scheduled a dead drop of intel for the Russians. With the FBI closely surveilling him, they watched him climb under a bridge, leave the package, come back up, and go back to his car. As he was grabbing his keys, 2 vans of SWAT members swerved in front of him and quickly arrested him. Upon being arrested, Hanssen asked, "What took you so long?" With Hanssen in custody, one of the most notorious double agents in United States history had finally been caught. But how was justice served? With Hanssen arrested and an incredible amount of evidence against him, he would ultimately plead guilty to 15 counts of espionage on July 6, 2001. As part of his plea deal, he would avoid the death penalty in exchange for complete cooperation in revealing his activities to the government, but not to the public. Hanssen would be sentenced to life in prison without parole, spending the rest of his life in a jail cell in the infamous Supermax prison at ADX Florence in Colorado. He would spend 23 hours hours a day inside that cell until he passed away on June 5, 2023. Hanssen took an oath to support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and to bear true faith and allegiance to the same. But instead, he decided to violate that oath. The FBI trusted him with some of the most sensitive secrets of the US government, and instead of upholding that trust, he abused and betrayed it. If you want to learn more about Robert Hanssen and the story of how he got caught, we have a recommended reading for you. Check out Spy, the inside story of how FBI's Robert Hanssen betrayed America by David Wise. Scan the QR code on screen or go to the link in the description below. If you like these types of story videos, be sure to check out our video on Red Cell, the unit that led to the arrest of SEAL Team 6's founder Richard Marcinko. Scan the QR code on screen or go to the link in the description below, along with our social media accounts. Well, that is the down and dirty of the infamous story of Robert Hanssen. If you learned something from this video, make sure to give us a like and subscribe to our channel. As always, thank you for watching. Do you even want to be here? A special thank you to all of our supporters in our Patreon and YouTube membership. If you'd like to be featured in our videos, consider joining and go check out the links in our description below. Your contribution is greatly appreciated and will help us create more great content.
All your friends are subscribing to General Discharge, and you don't even want to be here.